In the amen, truth takes its stand, with faith and love, hand in hand.
In the beginning there was only darkness. Then God spoke, "Let there be light." And suddenly light pierced the darkness. God called the light day and the darkness night. That was the first day. On the second day God formed the sky, separating the waters above from those below. On the third day dry land appeared. God covered it with grass, trees, and every kind of plant. On the fourth day, God set the sun to rule the day and the moon and stars to rule the night. On the fifth day, God filled the seas with fish and the skies with birds of every kind. On the sixth day, God made all kinds of animals, and then He created man and woman in His own image. On the seventh day, God looked at all He had made and saw it was very good. So He rested, blessing that day as holy. On the seventh day, God finished His work of creation. He blessed the day and made it holy, because on that day He rested from all He had made. At that time, no rain had fallen on the earth. Instead, streams came up from the ground and watered the land. Then the Lord God formed man from the dust of the ground and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and the man became a living being. God planted a garden in Eden in the east. It was filled with beautiful trees and delicious fruit. In the middle of the garden were two special trees, the tree of life and the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. A river flowed from Eden and split into 4 branches, watering the entire region. Each river had a name and flowed through lands rich with gold, precious stones, and life. God placed the man in the garden to care for it and watch over it. But He gave him one command: "You may eat from any tree, except the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. If you eat from it, you will surely die." Then God said, "It is not good for man to be alone." He brought all the animals before Adam and he named them, but no suitable helper was found. So God caused Adam to fall into a deep sleep. Then He took one of his ribs and made it into a woman. When Adam saw her, he said, "At last, bone of my bones, flesh of my flesh." The man and his wife were both naked and they felt no shame. They lived in perfect harmony with each other and with God. Now the serpent was the most cunning of all the wild animals the Lord God had made. He said to the woman, "Did God really say you must not eat from any tree in the garden?" Eve replied, "We may eat from the trees except the one in the middle. God said not to touch or eat from it or we will die." The serpent answered, "You won't die. God knows when you eat it, you'll become like Him, knowing good and evil." Eve looked at the fruit. It seemed beautiful, delicious, and full of wisdom. So she took it and ate it. Then she gave some to Adam, and he ate it too. At that moment their eyes were opened and they realized they were naked. So they sewed fig leaves together to cover themselves. When they heard the sound of God walking in the garden, they hid. "Where are you?" God called. Adam answered, "I heard you, and I was afraid because I was naked." God said, "Who told you that you were naked? Have you eaten from the tree I told you not to?" Adam blamed Eve. Eve blamed the serpent. Then God cursed the serpent. "You will crawl on your belly and eat dust." To the woman, "You will have pain in childbirth." To Adam, "You will work the ground in sweat until you return to dust." God made garments of animal skin for Adam and Eve. Then He drove them out of the garden to work the land from which they were taken. God placed a mighty angel and a flaming sword to guard the tree of life, so they could never return. Adam and Eve had a son named Cain. Later they had another son, Abel. Abel became a shepherd and Cain worked the soil as a farmer. One day, Both brothers brought offerings to God. Cain brought produce from the land, and Abel brought the best portions of his flock. God accepted Abel's offering, but not Cain's. Cain was furious, and his face fell. God said to Cain, "Why are you angry? If you do what is right, you'll be accepted, but if not, sin is crouching at your door. It wants to control you, but you must master it." Later, while they were in the field, Cain attacked his brother Abel and killed him. God asked Cain, "Where is your brother Abel?" Cain replied, "I don't know. Am I my brother's keeper?" God said, "Your brother's blood cries out to me from the ground. Now you are cursed, the ground will no longer yield crops for you. You will be a restless wanderer." Cain cried, "My punishment is too much. I'll be hunted and killed wherever I go." But God marked Cain to protect him and said, "No one may harm him." Then Cain left the Lord's presence and went east of Eden to the land of Nod. This is the written record of Adam's family line. When God created mankind, he made them in his own image, male and female, and blessed them. Adam lived for 930 years. Then came Seth, Enosh, Kenan, and many others. Each lived long lives, fathered children, and returned to the dust. The earth began to fill with people. But one man was different. Enoch walked faithfully with God, and then he was no more because God took him away. After many generations, a man named Lamech had a son, and named him Noah, saying, "He will comfort us in our painful labor on this cursed ground." As people multiplied across the earth, they grew more violent and wicked. Every thought in their hearts was only evil, all the time. The sons of God saw the daughters of men were beautiful, and they took them as wives. Strange giants, the Nephilim, walked the earth in those days. God saw how wicked the world had become. His heart was deeply troubled, and he said, "I regret that I made mankind. I will wipe them from the earth, humans, animals, birds, and creatures." But one man stood apart, Noah. He was righteous and blameless in his generation, and he walked with God. God said to Noah, "The end of all flesh is near, for the earth is filled with violence. So make an ark of gopher wood, build it large with rooms and 3 decks. Make the ark 300 cubits long, 50 cubits wide, and 30 cubits high. Cover it with pitch and include a door on the side and a window above. I will bring a great flood to destroy all life under the sky, but I will establish my covenant with you. You, your family, and pairs of every kind of creature will enter the ark and be saved." Noah did everything just as God commanded him. Then the Lord said to Noah, "Go into the ark, you and your entire household, for I have seen that you alone are righteous in this generation. Take with you 7 pairs of every clean animal and 1 pair of each unclean animal, along with every kind of bird and creature that moves along the ground." God said, "In 7 days I will send rain on the earth for 40 days and 40 nights, and I will wipe from the face of the earth every living thing I have made." And Noah did all that the Lord commanded him. He was 600 years old when the flood waters came upon the earth. Noah, his wife, his sons, and their wives entered the ark with all the animals. Then the Lord shut them in. On that very day the rain began to fall. Underground springs burst forth and the skies poured down. The waters rose and lifted the ark high above the earth. Every mountain was soon covered. Every living thing that moved on the earth perished, birds, livestock, wild animals, and all mankind. Only Noah and those with him in the ark were left. But God remembered Noah and all the living creatures with him. He caused a wind to blow over the earth, and the waters began to recede. The springs of the deep and the floodgates of heaven were closed. The rain stopped. The waters steadily went down, and the ark came to rest on the mountains of Ararat. Noah sent out a raven, then a dove. The dove returned with nothing. Later it came back with a fresh olive leaf. At last, it did not return. Then God said to Noah, "Come out of the ark, you and your family and all the animals with you." Noah built an altar to the Lord and offered burnt offerings from every clean animal and bird. The Lord smelled the pleasing aroma and was pleased. The Lord said in his heart, "Never again will I curse the ground because of humans. As long as the earth endures, seed time and harvest, cold and heat, summer and winter, day and night, will never cease." Then God blessed Noah and his sons, saying, "Be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth." God said, "Every moving thing will be food for you, but you must not eat meat with lifeblood still in it. I will require an accounting for life." Then God said, "I now establish my covenant with you and your descendants and with every living creature that was with you. I have set my rainbow in the clouds, and it will be the sign of the covenant between me and the earth. Never again will the waters become a flood to destroy all life. When the rainbow appears, I will remember my covenant." Noah, a man of the soil, planted a vineyard. One day Noah drank wine and became drunk and lay uncovered in his tent. Ham saw his father's nakedness and told his brothers. Shem and Japheth walked in backward and covered him. When Noah awoke, he said, "Cursed be Canaan, blessed be Shem. May God extend Japheth's territory." Noah lived 350 years after the flood. Altogether, he lived 950 years, and then he died. These are the generations of Noah's sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. After the flood, they each had sons, and from them came the nations of the earth. The descendants of Japheth spread into the coastlands and the distant north, forming the maritime peoples. The sons of Ham became the ancestors of Cush, Egypt, Canaan, and more, founders of powerful early civilizations. One descendant, Nimrod, became a mighty warrior and king. He built great cities like Babylon and Nineveh. From Shem came the Semitic peoples, ancestors of Eber, from whom came Abraham and the Hebrew people. From these three sons of Noah, the nations of the earth spread out, each with its own land, language, and tribe. Now the whole world had one language and a common speech. As people moved eastward, they settled in a plain in Shinar. They said, "Come, let us build a city with a tower that reaches the heavens so that we may make a name for ourselves and not be scattered." But the Lord came down to see the city and the tower the people were building. The Lord said, "If as one people speaking the same language they have begun to do this, nothing they plan will be impossible for them. Come, let us confuse their language so they will not understand each other." So the Lord scattered them from there over all the earth, and they stopped building the city. That is why it was called Babel, because there the Lord confused the language of the whole world. The Lord said to Abram, "Go from your country, your people, and your father's household to the land I will show you. I will make you into a great nation and bless you. I will make your name great, and all peoples on earth will be blessed through you." So Abram went as the Lord had told him, and they set out for the land of Canaan. Abram traveled through the land and built an altar to the Lord near Bethel, calling on his name. But there was a severe famine in the land. So Abram went down to Egypt to live there for a while. Abram said to Sarai, "Say you are my sister, so that I will be treated well and my life spared because of you." When Pharaoh's officials saw Sarai's beauty, she was taken into his palace, and Abram was treated well for her sake. But the Lord inflicted serious diseases on Pharaoh and his household because of Sarai. Pharaoh summoned Abram and said, "Why didn't you tell me she was your wife? Take her and go." So Abram went up from Egypt to the Negev with his wife and Lot. He had become very wealthy in livestock, silver and gold. Abram returned to the place where he had first built an altar. There he called on the name of the Lord. But the land could not support both Abram and Lot. Their herders quarreled over grazing land. Abram said, "Let there be no quarrel between us. If you go left, I'll go right. If you go right, I'll go left." Lot looked and saw that the plain of the Jordan was well watered, like the garden of the Lord. So he chose it for himself and moved east. Lot pitched his tents near Sodom, where the people were wicked and sinning greatly against the Lord. After Lot departed, the Lord said to Abram, "Look around. All the land you see I will give to you and your descendants forever." Abram moved to Hebron and built an altar to the Lord there. 4 kings from the east waged war against 5 kings of the Jordan plain, including the kings of Sodom and Gomorrah. The invaders seized all the goods of Sodom and Gomorrah and carried off Lot and his possessions, for he was living near Sodom. A survivor fled and told Abram what had happened. Abram gathered 318 trained men and set out in pursuit. Abram attacked by night, divided his men and routed the enemy, pursuing them beyond Damascus. Abram recovered all the goods and brought back his nephew Lot and the other captives. Melchizedek, king of Salem and priest of God Most High, brought out bread and wine and blessed Abram. Melchizedek said, "Blessed be Abram, and blessed be God Most High, who delivered your enemies into your hand." Abram gave him 1/10 of everything. The king of Sodom said, "Give me the people and keep the goods for yourself." But Abram replied, "I will take nothing, and so you cannot say, 'I made Abram rich.'" After these things, the word of the Lord came to Abram in a vision. "Do not be afraid, Abram, I am your shield. Your reward will be very great." Abram said, "O Lord God, what can you give me since I remain childless? A servant in my household will inherit everything." Then the word of the Lord came, "Your own son will be your heir." The Lord took Abram outside and said, "Look up at the sky and count the stars if you can, so shall your offspring be." Abram believed the Lord, and it was credited to him as righteousness. The Lord said, "I am the Lord who brought you from Ur to give you this land." Abram asked, "How can I know that I will possess it?" The Lord said, "Bring me a heifer, a goat, a ram, a dove, and a pigeon." Abram arranged them as God instructed. As the sun was setting, Abram fell into a deep sleep, and a dreadful darkness came over him. Then the Lord said, "Your descendants will be strangers in a land not their own, but I will punish the nation they serve, and they will come out with great possessions." When the sun had set and darkness fell, a smoking firepot and a blazing torch passed between the pieces. So the Lord made a covenant with Abram. Sarai had borne Abram no children. She said, "The Lord has kept me from having children. Go, sleep with my servant. Perhaps I can build a family through her." Abram agreed, and Hagar became pregnant. But when she knew she was pregnant, she began to despise Sarai. Sarai said to Abram, "You are responsible for this." Abram replied, "Your servant is in your hands. Do with her whatever you think best." Sarai mistreated Hagar, so she fled into the desert. The angel of the Lord found Hagar near a spring in the desert. He said, "Hagar, servant of Sarai, where have you come from and where are you going?" The angel said, "Return to your mistress and submit to her. I will increase your descendants so they will be too numerous to count. You are now pregnant and will give birth to a son. You shall name him Ishmael, for the Lord has heard your misery." Hagar said, "You are the God who sees me." That is why the well was called Bir-lahai-roi. So Hagar bore Abram a son, and Abram gave him the name Ishmael. Abram was 86 years old when Hagar gave birth. When Abram was 99 years old, the Lord appeared to him and said, "I am God Almighty. Walk before me and be blameless." God said, "I will make my covenant between me and you and will greatly increase your numbers. No longer will you be called Abram. Your name will be Abraham, For I have made you a father of many nations. I will make nations of you, and kings will come from you. I will establish my covenant as an everlasting covenant between me and you and your descendants after you. Every male among you shall be circumcised. It will be the sign of the covenant between me and you. God said, As for Sarai your wife, you are no longer to call her Sarai. Her name will be Sarah. I will bless her and give you a son by her. Abraham fell face down. He laughed and said, Will a child be born to a man 100 years old? Will Sarah bear a child at 90? Yes, your wife Sarah will bear you a son, and you will call him Isaac. I will establish my covenant with him. That very day Abraham took every male in his household and circumcised them as God had told him. The Lord appeared to Abraham near the great trees of Mamre. Abraham looked up and saw 3 men standing nearby. He hurried to greet them and bowed low. Let me get you water and bread and wash your feet, and you can rest. Abraham prepared a feast, curds, milk, and a tender calf. He stood nearby as they ate. One of them said, Where is your wife Sarah? Abraham replied, In the tent. Then the Lord said, I will surely return this time next year, and Sarah, your wife, will have a son. Sarah laughed to herself, thinking, After I'm worn out and my husband is old, will I now have this pleasure? The Lord said, Why did Sarah laugh? Is anything too hard for the Lord? Sarah was afraid and denied it, but he said, Yes, you did laugh. When the meal was over, the men set out toward Sodom, and Abraham walked with them to see them on their way. Then the Lord said, Shall I hide from Abraham what I am about to do? The outcry against Sodom is so great. Abraham said, Will you sweep away the righteous with the wicked? What if there are 50 or 40, even 10? When the Lord had finished speaking, he left, and Abraham returned home. 2 angels arrived at Sodom in the evening, and Lot was sitting at the city gate. He rose to meet them and bowed down. Lot insisted they stay at his house. He prepared a meal and they ate, but before they had gone to bed, all the men of Sodom surrounded the house. Bring them out so we can abuse them, they shouted. Lot begged, Do not do this wicked thing. The mob rushed forward, but the angels struck them with blindness. The angels said, Get your family out of here, we are going to destroy this place. Lot warned his sons-in-law, but they thought he was joking. With dawn breaking, the angels grabbed Lot's hand and led his family out of the city. Flee for your lives, don't look back. Then the Lord rained down burning sulfur on Sodom and Gomorrah. From the heavens came fire and destruction. Lot's wife looked back, and she became a pillar of salt. Abraham looked down toward Sodom and saw dense smoke rising from the land like smoke from a furnace. Lot and his daughters fled to the hills and lived in a cave, afraid to remain in the cities. Abraham moved to the region of Gerar. There he said of his wife Sarah, She is my sister. So Abimelech, king of Gerar, sent for Sarah and took her into his palace. But God came to Abimelech in a dream and said, You are as good as dead because of the woman you have taken. She is married. Abimelech said, Lord, will you destroy an innocent nation? I did not know she was married. God replied, Yes, I know you acted with integrity. That is why I kept you from sinning. Now return the woman to her husband. Abimelech said to Abraham, What have you done to us? Why did you say, She is my sister? Abimelech gave sheep, cattle, and servants to Abraham and returned Sarah. He said, My land is before you, live wherever you like. Then Abraham prayed to God, and God healed Abimelech's household so they could bear children again. Now the Lord was gracious to Sarah as he had said, and she bore a son to Abraham in his old age. Abraham gave the name Isaac to the son Sarah bore him, and circumcised him as God commanded. Sarah said, God has brought me laughter, and everyone who hears will laugh with me. At Isaac's weaning feast, Sarah saw the son of Hagar mocking, and she said to Abraham, "Send that slave woman and her son away." The matter distressed Abraham greatly because it concerned his son. But God said to Abraham, "Do not be distressed. I will make the son of the slave into a nation also." Early the next morning, Abraham gave Hagar food and water and sent her with Ishmael into the desert. When the water was gone, she placed the boy under a bush and wept, unable to watch him die. God heard the boy crying, and the angel of God called to Hagar from heaven, "Do not be afraid, I will make him into a great nation." Then God opened her eyes, and she saw a well of water. She gave the boy a drink, and they lived in the desert. God tested Abraham and said, "Take your son, your only son Isaac, whom you love, sacrifice him as a burnt offering." Early the next morning, Abraham set out with Isaac and 2 servants toward the place God had told him. On the 3rd day, Abraham looked up and saw the place in the distance. Isaac asked, "The fire and wood are here, but where is the lamb?" Abraham replied, "God himself will provide." Abraham built an altar, arranged the wood, bound his son Isaac, and laid him on top. Abraham built an altar, arranged the wood, bound his son Isaac, and laid him on top. "Abraham, Abraham, do not lay a hand on the boy," for now God knew Abraham feared him. Abraham looked up and saw a ram caught by its horns in a thicket and sacrificed it instead. Abraham called that place, "The Lord will provide," and God reaffirmed his promise to bless all nations through him. Sarah lived to be 127 years old. She died at Kiriath Arba, and Abraham mourned and wept for her. Abraham rose and asked the Hittites to sell him a burial site so he could bury his wife. They offered the land freely, but Abraham insisted on paying the full price. Abraham purchased the cave of Machpelah, and there he buried Sarah. Abraham, now old, asked his chief servant to swear an oath, not to take a wife for Isaac from the Canaanites, but to go to his homeland to find her. The servant placed his hand under Abraham's thigh and swore to carry out the mission. The servant set out with 10 camels loaded with gifts, traveling to Nahor's town in Mesopotamia. He stopped by a well outside the city at evening, the time when women came to draw water. The servant prayed, "Lord, let the woman who offers water to me and my camels be the one you have chosen for Isaac." Before he finished praying, Rebekah came out with a jar on her shoulder. She was very beautiful and kind. Rebekah gave him a drink, then drew water for all his camels, just as he had prayed. The servant gave her gold bracelets and asked whose daughter she was. She answered, "I am the daughter of Bethuel, son of Nahor." Rebekah ran home, and her brother Laban welcomed the servant into their house. At the meal, the servant told the full story of his oath, his prayer, and how God answered through Rebekah. Laban and Bethuel said, "This is from the Lord. Take Rebekah and go." They asked Rebekah, "Will you go with this man?" She replied, "I will go." Rebekah set out with her maids, riding camels, following the servant back to Canaan. Isaac was out in the field meditating when he looked up and saw the camels approaching. Rebekah saw Isaac, veiled herself, and the servant told Isaac all that had happened. Isaac took her as his wife, and he loved her. Another famine struck, and Isaac went to Gerar, to Abimelech, king of the Philistines. The Lord appeared to Isaac and said, "Do not go to Egypt. Stay here, and I will bless you as I did Abraham." Out of fear, Isaac claimed Rebekah was his sister, but Abimelech discovered the truth and rebuked him. Despite this, Isaac planted crops and reaped 100-fold, for the Lord blessed him. The Philistines envied him, filling up the wells dug by Abraham. Abimelech said, "Move away, for you are too powerful for us." Isaac reopened the wells, but quarreling broke out. So he moved again until he found room, naming the last well Rehoboth. "Now the Lord has given us space." At Beersheba, the Lord appeared and repeated his covenant, "Do not fear, for I am with you." Abimelech came with his commander and sought peace. They made a treaty, and Isaac prepared a feast. That very day, Isaac's servants found water. He called it Sheba, and the town became Beersheba. When Isaac was old and his eyes were weak, he called Esau. "Go hunt game and prepare me a meal so I may bless you before I die." Rebekah listened. She called Jacob. "Go, bring 2 young goats. I will prepare food for your father and you will receive the blessing." Jacob hesitated. "My brother Esau is hairy and I have smooth skin. What if father curses me?" But Rebekah said, "Let the curse fall on me." Rebekah dressed Jacob in Esau's best clothes and placed goat skins on his hands and neck. Jacob entered. "I am Esau, your firstborn." Isaac, doubtful, said, "Come near, that I may feel you." His hands were hairy, but the voice was Jacob's. After eating, Isaac blessed him. "May God give you heaven's dew, earth's richness, and nations serve you." Esau came back from hunting and prepared food. "Father, rise and eat." Isaac trembled greatly. "Who was it that came before you?" When Esau heard his father's words, he cried out bitterly, "Bless me, me too, my father." But Isaac said, "Your brother has taken your blessing." Isaac said, "You will live away from the earth's richness and you will serve your brother. But when restless, you will throw off his yoke." Esau burned with hatred. "I will kill my brother after father dies." Rebekah heard and sent Jacob away to her brother Laban in Haran. Isaac called Jacob, blessed him, and commanded, "Do not marry a Canaanite woman. Go to Paddan Aram to the house of Laban and take a wife there." Esau saw that Isaac disliked Canaanite wives, so he married from Ishmael's family, trying to please his father. Jacob set out from Beersheba toward Haran. Alone, he stopped for the night, using a stone for a pillow. He dreamed of a stairway reaching from earth to heaven, with angels ascending and descending upon it. The Lord stood above it and said, "I am the God of Abraham and Isaac. The land on which you lie I will give to you and your descendants. I am with you and will watch over you." Jacob awoke trembling. "Surely the Lord is in this place. How awesome is this! This is the house of God, the gate of heaven." Early the next morning, Jacob took the stone he had used as a pillow, set it upright as a pillar, poured oil on it, and named the place Bethel. Jacob journeyed on and came to a well in the fields where flocks were gathered. A large stone covered the well's mouth. Rachel, daughter of Laban, arrived with her father's sheep. Jacob saw her and was moved at once. With great strength, Jacob rolled the stone from the well's mouth and watered Rachel's flock. Jacob kissed Rachel and wept aloud, telling her he was Rebekah's son. She ran to tell her father. Laban welcomed Jacob as family. Jacob stayed and worked for him. Jacob loved Rachel and offered to work 7 years for her hand in marriage. To him, the years seemed only a few days because of his love for her. But on the wedding night, Laban gave him Leah instead of Rachel. In the morning, Jacob discovered the trick. Jacob said to Laban, "Why have you deceived me?" Laban replied, "It is our custom to give the older daughter first. Work 7 more years, and Rachel will also be yours." Jacob agreed. After Leah's week was completed, he also married Rachel, whom he truly loved, though he had to serve 7 more years. Rachel, unable to bear children, cried to Jacob, "Give me children or I will die." Jacob became angry and said, "Am I in God's place, who has withheld children from you?" Rachel gave her maid Bilhah to Jacob, and Bilhah bore Dan and Naphtali. Rachel said, "I have wrestled with my sister and I have prevailed." Leah, seeing she had stopped bearing, gave her maid Zilpah to Jacob. Zilpah bore Gad and Asher. Reuben, Leah's son, found mandrakes in the field. Rachel asked for them. Leah replied, "Isn't it enough you've taken my husband? Now you want my son's mandrakes too? Leah bore Issachar, Zebulun, and a daughter, Dinah. Then God remembered Rachel. She conceived and bore Joseph, saying that God has taken away my disgrace. Jacob asked Laban to let him return home. But Laban pleaded for him to stay, for the Lord had blessed him through Jacob. Jacob agreed, but asked for wages of speckled and spotted sheep and goats. Jacob skillfully bred the flocks, and he grew exceedingly prosperous with large herds, servants, and camels. Jacob heard that Laban's sons were saying, "Jacob has taken all that was our father's." And Jacob noticed Laban's attitude was no longer favorable toward him. Then the Lord said to Jacob, "Go back to the land of your fathers and relatives, and I will be with you." Jacob called Rachel and Leah to the fields. He explained Laban's deceit and God's blessing upon him. They agreed, "Do whatever God has told you." Jacob put his children and wives on camels, gathered his possessions, and secretly fled while Laban was away. Unknown to Jacob, Rachel stole her father's household idols. On the third day, Laban learned Jacob had fled. He pursued them for 7 days, overtaking them in the hill country. But God warned Laban in a dream, "Do not say anything to Jacob, good or bad." Laban caught up with Jacob and accused him, "Why did you deceive me and steal my gods?" Jacob protested, not knowing Rachel had taken them. Rachel hid the idols in a camel's saddle and was not discovered. Finally, they made a covenant. They piled stones as a witness, calling the place Mizpah. Laban said, "May the Lord watch between you and me when we are absent from one another." Early the next morning, Laban kissed his grandchildren and daughters, blessed them, and returned home. Jacob went on his way in peace. As Jacob went on his way, angels of God met him. He said, "This is God's camp," and named the place Mahanaim. Jacob sent messengers to Esau, saying, "I come in humility with flocks and servants." The messengers returned, "Esau is coming to meet you with 400 men." Jacob was greatly afraid. He divided his people, flocks, and herds into 2 groups, hoping some might survive if Esau attacked. Then Jacob prayed, "O God of my father Abraham, deliver me from the hand of my brother Esau. I am unworthy, but you have promised to bless me." Jacob prepared a generous gift for Esau: goats, camels, cattle, and donkeys, sending them ahead in groups with servants to soften his brother's heart. That night Jacob sent his family across the river. Left alone, a mysterious man wrestled with him until daybreak. The man touched Jacob's hip and wrenched it, but Jacob held on. "I will not let you go unless you bless me." He replied, "Your name will no longer be Jacob, but Israel, for you have struggled with God and with men and have overcome." The sun rose as Jacob limped away, blessed and renamed Israel. He marveled, saying, "I saw God face to face, and yet my life was spared." Jacob looked up and saw Esau coming with 400 men. Fear rose within him, but he arranged his family in careful order. Jacob went ahead of them, bowing to the ground 7 times as he approached his brother. But Esau ran to meet Jacob, embraced him, threw his arms around his neck, and kissed him. Together they wept. Esau looked at the women and children and asked, "Who are these with you?" Jacob replied, "They are the children God has graciously given your servant." Jacob pressed Esau to accept the gifts of livestock he had sent ahead, saying, "Please accept this blessing from me, for God has been gracious to me." Esau at first refused, but then accepted. Esau returned to Seir, while Jacob traveled on to Sukkoth, building shelters for his family and flocks. Thus the brothers parted in peace. Dinah, the daughter of Leah and Jacob, went out to visit the women of the land. Shechem, the son of Hamor the Hivite, saw her, seized her, and defiled her. Yet he grew attached to her and spoke tenderly to her. Shechem spoke to his father Hamor, "Get me this young woman as my wife." Hamor came to Jacob to speak of marriage, while Jacob's sons burned with anger at the outrage against their sister. The sons of Jacob answered deceitfully, saying, "We cannot give our sister to one who is uncircumcised. If every male among you is circumcised, then we will intermarry." Hamor and Shechem agreed, and all the men of the city were circumcised. On the third day, when the men were in pain, Simeon and Levi, Dinah's brothers, took their swords and attacked the unsuspecting city, killing every male. They killed Hamor and Shechem, rescued Dinah, and plundered the city. Jacob said to Simeon and Levi, "You have brought trouble on me by making me obnoxious to the peoples of the land. We are few in number, and they may unite to destroy us." But they replied, "Should he have treated our sister like a prostitute?" God said to Jacob, "Go up to Bethel and settle there and build an altar to the God who appeared to you when you fled from Esau." Jacob told his household, "Get rid of your foreign gods, purify yourselves, and change your clothes. Then let us go to Bethel." They gave him their idols and earrings, and Jacob buried them under an oak at Shechem. As they traveled, the terror of God fell on the surrounding towns so that no one pursued them. Jacob built an altar at Bethel and called the place El Bethel, because there God had revealed himself when he fled from his brother. God appeared to Jacob again, saying, "Your name is Jacob, but you will not be called Jacob any longer. Your name will be Israel. I am God Almighty. Be fruitful and increase. A nation and a community of nations will come from you." As they journeyed, Rachel went into hard labor and gave birth to Benjamin. But her labor was severe, and Rachel died, naming him with her last breath. Jacob buried her on the way to Bethlehem and set a pillar over her tomb. Jacob now had 12 sons: Reuben, Simeon, Levi, Judah, Issachar, Zebulun, Joseph, Benjamin, Dan, Naphtali, Gad, and Asher. Jacob came to his father Isaac at Mamre. Isaac lived to 180 years and died, and his sons Esau and Jacob buried him together. This is the account of Esau, who is Edom. He took his wives from the women of Canaan, and his sons were born in the land of Seir. The sons of Esau became the chiefs of the Edomites, each with their families, clans, and territories. The kings who reigned in Edom did so long before any king reigned in Israel. These were the descendants of Esau, the father of the Edomites, a nation that endured beside Israel. Jacob loved Joseph more than any of his other sons because he was born to him in his old age, and he made him a richly ornamented robe. When Joseph's brothers saw that their father loved him more than them, they hated him and could not speak a kind word to him. Joseph said, "Listen to this dream I had. We were binding sheaves of grain, and mine stood upright while yours bowed down to it." His brothers said, "Do you intend to reign over us? Will you actually rule us?" And they hated him all the more. Joseph had another dream. "The sun, moon, and 11 stars bowed down to me." When he told his father, Jacob rebuked him but kept the matter in mind. One day Jacob sent Joseph to check on his brothers. When they saw him coming in his robe, they plotted, "Here comes the dreamer, let's kill him." Reuben persuaded them not to kill him but to throw him into a pit. They stripped Joseph of his robe and cast him into an empty cistern. As they sat down to eat, they saw a caravan of Ishmaelites. Judah said, "Let's sell him." So they sold Joseph for 20 pieces of silver, and he was taken to Egypt. The brothers dipped Joseph's robe in goat's blood and showed it to Jacob. He wept bitterly, saying, "Surely Joseph has been torn to pieces." Meanwhile, the Midianites sold Joseph in Egypt to Potiphar, an official of Pharaoh and captain of the guard. At that time, Judah left his brothers and went down to stay with a man of Adullam. He married a Canaanite woman, and she bore him 3 sons, Onan, and Shelah. Judah chose a wife for his firstborn. Her name was Tamar. But was wicked in the Lord's sight, and the Lord put him to death. Judah told Onan, "Fulfill your duty to your brother's wife." But Onan refused to produce offspring for his brother, and the Lord put him to death also. Judah said to Tamar, "Live as a widow in your father's house until my son Shelah grows up." But Judah never intended to give her to him. Years later, Judah's wife died. Tamar disguised herself with a veil and sat by the roadside. Judah thought she was a prostitute and approached her, promising a young goat as payment. She asked for his seal, cord, and staff as a pledge. 3 months later, Judah was told, "Your daughter-in-law Tamar is guilty of immorality." Judah ordered her to be burned. But Tamar sent Judah's seal, cord, and staff, saying, "The father of my child is the man to whom these belong." Judah recognized them and said, "She is more righteous than I, since I did not give her to my son Shelah." In time, Tamar gave birth to twin boys, Perez and Zerah. Perez would become an ancestor of King David and of the Messiah to come. Joseph was taken down to Egypt and sold to Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh. The Lord was with Joseph, and he prospered in all he did. Potiphar saw that the Lord gave Joseph success in everything, so he put him in charge of his entire household. From then on, the Lord blessed all that Potiphar had. Now Joseph was handsome and well-built, and after a time Potiphar's wife said, "Come, lie with me." But Joseph refused, saying, "How could I do such a wicked thing and sin against God?" Though she spoke to Joseph day after day, he refused. One day, when none of the servants were inside, she caught him by his cloak. Joseph left his cloak in her hands and ran out of the house. She called the servants and said, "Look, this Hebrew tried to make sport of me, but he fled, leaving his cloak beside me." When Potiphar came home, she told him the same story. When Potiphar heard this, he was furious and had Joseph thrown into prison. Yet even there the Lord was with Joseph, granting him favor in the eyes of the warden. While Joseph was in prison, Pharaoh's cupbearer and baker were confined there as well. The captain assigned Joseph to attend to them. One night, both the cupbearer and the baker each had a dream. In the morning they were troubled, and Joseph noticed their sadness. Joseph said, "Do not interpretations belong to God? Tell me your dreams." The cupbearer said, "In my dream I saw a vine with 3 branches. It budded, blossomed, and clusters of ripe grapes appeared. I took the grapes and squeezed them into Pharaoh's cup." Joseph said, "The 3 branches are 3 days. Within 3 days Pharaoh will restore you to your position, and you will put the cup in his hand once more." The baker said, "I too had a dream. On my head were 3 baskets of bread. In the top basket were baked goods for Pharaoh, but birds came and ate them from the basket." Joseph replied, "The 3 baskets are 3 days. Within 3 days Pharaoh will lift off your head and impale your body, and the birds will eat away your flesh." On Pharaoh's birthday, the cupbearer was restored to his position, but the baker was executed just as Joseph had said. Yet the cupbearer forgot Joseph. Follow, like, and subscribe for the conclusion of the book of Genesis, chapters 41 to 50. Pharaoh dreamed. He was standing by the Nile when 7 healthy fat cows came up from the river. Then 7 thin and ugly cows came and ate the fat cows, but they remained thin. Pharaoh dreamed again. 7 full good ears of grain were growing on one stalk. Then 7 thin scorched ears swallowed the full ears. Pharaoh was troubled and called all his magicians and wise men, but none could interpret the dreams. The cupbearer remembered Joseph, who had interpreted his and the baker's dreams in prison. Pharaoh sent for Joseph immediately. Joseph said, "The dreams are one. 7 years of plenty will come, followed by 7 years of famine. Now is the time to prepare." Joseph advised Pharaoh to appoint a wise and discerning man to oversee the land, storing food during the years of plenty to survive the famine. Pharaoh and all his officials were impressed by Joseph's wisdom. Pharaoh said, "Can we find anyone like this man, one in whom is the Spirit of God?" He appointed Joseph over all Egypt, giving him authority second only to Pharaoh himself. Pharaoh gave Joseph Asenath, daughter of an Egyptian priest, as a wife. Joseph went throughout Egypt, managing the stores, gathering grain during the 7 plentiful years. The 7 years of plenty came to an end, and the famine began. People from all lands came to Egypt to buy grain from Joseph, who had prepared for this exact moment. When Jacob learned there was grain in Egypt, he sent 10 of his sons to buy food. But he did not send Benjamin, fearing harm might come to him. Joseph's brothers came to Egypt and bowed before him, not recognizing him. But Joseph recognized them and remembered his dreams. Joseph spoke harshly and accused them of being spies. They insisted they were honest men, sons of one father, with a youngest brother at home and one who was no more. Joseph demanded they prove their honesty by bringing Benjamin. He imprisoned them for 3 days, then released all but Simeon, whom he kept bound. As the brothers traveled home, they discovered their payment for grain returned in their sacks. Their hearts sank, filled with dread, asking, "What has God done to us?" They told Jacob all that happened. He mourned the loss of Simeon and feared sending Benjamin, saying, "Everything is against me." The famine continued, and Jacob told his sons to return to Egypt for food. Judah reminded him they could not go without Benjamin. Judah said, "I will be responsible for him. If I do not bring him back, let the blame fall on me forever." Jacob reluctantly agreed and sent them with gifts and double the silver. The brothers returned to Egypt with Benjamin. When Joseph saw Benjamin with them, he ordered a feast to be prepared at his house. Fearing they were being punished for the silver in their sacks, they spoke nervously to Joseph's steward, who reassured them, "Your God has given you treasure. I received your payment." When Joseph entered and saw Benjamin, his own mother's son, his heart burned with love. He hurried away to weep in private, then returned and ordered the feast to begin. The brothers ate at Joseph's table, astonished as they were seated in the exact order of their birth. Benjamin's portion was 5 times larger than the rest. They drank and rejoiced together. Joseph commanded his steward, "Fill their bags with food, return each man's silver, and place my silver cup in the youngest one's sack." The steward obeyed. At dawn, the brothers set out for home with their donkeys, relieved and unaware of the trap. Joseph's steward pursued them and accused them of stealing the silver cup. Shocked, the brothers protested their innocence, saying, "Whichever of us has it shall die, and the rest shall be slaves." The steward searched each sack, beginning with the oldest and ending with the youngest. To their horror, the cup was found in Benjamin's sack. The brothers tore their clothes in grief and returned to Joseph's house, where they fell before him. Joseph declared that Benjamin must remain as his slave. Judah stepped forward, pleading with Joseph, "Take me instead of the boy. Let him return to his father, for his life is bound to the boy's life." Overcome with emotion, Joseph ordered everyone else to leave the room. Alone with his brothers, he wept so loudly that the Egyptians and Pharaoh's household heard it. Joseph said to his brothers, "I am Joseph. Is my father still alive?" His brothers could not answer him, for they were terrified. Joseph comforted them. "Do not be distressed or angry with yourselves. It was to save lives that God sent me ahead of you. You meant evil against me, but God used it for good." Joseph embraced Benjamin and wept on his neck. Then he kissed all his brothers, and they wept together. Pharaoh heard the news and was pleased. He told Joseph to bring his father and family to Egypt, promising them the best of the land. Joseph gave his brothers provisions, clothing, and silver. They returned to Canaan and told Jacob, "Joseph is still alive and he rules over Egypt." Jacob's spirit revived, and he resolved to go see his son. Israel set out with all he had. At Beersheba, he offered sacrifices to the God of his father Isaac. In a vision at night, God spoke to Jacob, "Do not be afraid to go down to Egypt, for I will make you into a great nation there. I will go with you, and Joseph's hand will close your eyes." Jacob's sons carried him, their children, and their wives in the wagons Pharaoh had provided. They brought their livestock and possessions into Egypt. The sons of Israel, their families and descendants were listed. 70 in all went down into Egypt with Jacob. When Jacob arrived in Goshen, Joseph went to meet him. As soon as he saw his father, Joseph threw his arms around him and wept for a long time. Joseph instructed his brothers to tell Pharaoh they were shepherds, so they could settle in the land of Goshen, a place set apart for them. Joseph brought 5 of his brothers before Pharaoh. They told Pharaoh they were shepherds seeking a place to live. Pharaoh granted them the land of Goshen, and even offered to put capable men in charge of his livestock. Joseph then brought in his father Jacob. Jacob stood before Pharaoh and blessed him. Joseph settled his family in the best part of the land, the region of Ramesses, just as Pharaoh commanded. He provided food for his father, brothers, and their households. The famine was severe. Egyptians came to Joseph, first exchanging money, then livestock, and finally land for food. Pharaoh became owner of all the land, while Joseph managed it wisely. Joseph established a law that 1/5 of the produce belonged to Pharaoh, except for the priests, who received a fixed allotment. The people thanked Joseph, saying, "You have saved our lives." Jacob lived in Egypt 17 years. As his death approached, he made Joseph swear to bury him not in Egypt, but in the land of his fathers. When Jacob grew weak, Joseph was told, "Your father is ill." He took his 2 sons, Manasseh and Ephraim, with him. Jacob summoned his strength and sat up on his bed. Jacob recalled God's appearance at Luz, where he promised to make him fruitful and to give the land to his descendants. Jacob declared that Joseph's 2 sons would be reckoned as his own. Joseph brought his sons forward. Jacob kissed and embraced them, saying, "I never expected to see your face again, and now God has let me see your children too." Joseph positioned Manasseh, the firstborn, at Jacob's right hand, and Ephraim at his left. But Jacob crossed his hands, placing his right hand on Ephraim, the younger. Jacob blessed the boys, invoking the God of his fathers Abraham and Isaac, and the God who had been his shepherd all his life. He prayed for them to grow into a multitude on the earth. Joseph tried to correct his father, saying Manasseh was the firstborn. But Jacob refused, saying, "I know, my son, but Ephraim will be greater, and his descendants will become a multitude of nations." Jacob gave Joseph an extra portion of land, and his words made clear that God's promise would continue through his family. Jacob called his sons together, saying, "Gather around so I can tell you what will happen to you in days to come. Reuben, you are my firstborn, my might, the beginning of my strength. But you will no longer excel, for you went up to your father's bed and defiled it. Simeon and Levi are brothers. Their swords are weapons of violence. I will scatter them in Israel. Judah, your brothers will praise you. The scepter will not depart from Judah, nor the ruler's staff from between his feet, until the one comes to whom it belongs. Zebulun will live by the seashore and become a haven for ships. Issachar is a strong donkey lying down between two burdens. He will submit to forced labor. Dan will provide justice for his people. He will be a serpent by the roadside, striking the horses' heels. Gad will be attacked by raiders, but he will attack them at their heels. Asher's food will be rich. He will provide delicacies fit for a king. Naphtali is a doe set free that bears beautiful fawns. Joseph is a fruitful vine by a spring, whose branches climb over a wall. Though attacked, his bow remains steady. The Almighty blesses you with blessings of heaven above and the deep below. Benjamin is a ravenous wolf. In the morning he devours the prey, in the evening he divides the plunder. After blessing each of his sons, Jacob instructed them to bury him with Abraham and Isaac in the cave of Machpelah. Then he drew his feet into the bed, breathed his last, and was gathered to his people. Joseph threw himself on his father Jacob, who just passed away in his bed, wept over him and kissed him. Then he ordered that Jacob's body be embalmed, and the Egyptians mourned for 70 days. Joseph asked Pharaoh's permission to bury his father in Canaan. Pharaoh agreed, and Joseph went with a great company of officials, elders, and soldiers. They buried Jacob in the cave of Machpelah, near Abraham and Isaac. Afterward, Joseph and his brothers returned to Egypt. Joseph's brothers feared he would now repay them for their past betrayal. They bowed before him, pleading for forgiveness. But Joseph said, "Do not be afraid. You intended evil against me, but God intended it for good to save many lives." Joseph lived to the age of 110. Before he died, he said, "God will surely come to your aid and bring you up from this land to the land he promised." Joseph made the Israelites swear to carry his bones from Egypt. Then he died and was placed in a coffin in Egypt. This concludes the book of Genesis. Follow, like, and subscribe to In the Amen for some Book of Genesis Bible study, and also the book of Exodus.